Welcome to another edition of a post-race analysis video on the channel. I'm Keegan Schneider. This one's going to be somewhat quicker, but I'm going to make sure I get over every detail of what happened in the race last night, the Coke 400. We'll take a look at how the fantasy team did, and we'll wrap this one up. So first and foremost, you kind of see at least the top 10 for right now, but I'm going to go through from start to finish how the race ended up going. Stage 1, pretty quiet. You had that competition yellow early on. Kevin Harvick had an issue that he ended up having to come down to pit road. He ended up getting back into things later in the race, but he already locked up the regular season championship. He was strictly going for playoff points at this point. And it was pretty much dominated by William Byron up until about halfway through the stage. It looked like the Fords kind of ganged up on him. Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Keselowski. The Penske cars looked really fast, looked really well with each other for the majority of the race. Logano won both Stage 1 and Stage 2 in this one, and a pretty quiet first and second stage. There's some fuel mileage strategy in Stage 2 where the Chevys ended up short pitting. Fords thought that they could, Fords and Toyotas thought that they can make it on fuel all the way through the stage, which they did, but they had to save so much. And the Chevrolets ran them down with about a handful of laps to go. You saw them cut about halfway through that pack, and Jimmie Johnson was leading the way there. And Jimmy actually scored stage points in Stage 1, Stage 2. You know, he was one of the bubble drivers. William Byron was one of the bubble drivers as well, scored stage points in Stage 1, no stage points in Stage 2. And Matt DiBenedetto, he did not score hardly any stage points at all throughout the course of the night, just a few of them. So he was kind of put in a hole there. It looked like my prediction between William Byron and Johnson being the two guys to make it in was going to be correct, but we'll find out that that was not the case at the end of the race. They had the first big one with just less than 10 laps to go. There was also a caution for James Davidson blowing a tire with just less than 20 laps left, and that kind of stacked the field up for the restart, and that's when the chaos kind of ensued. They made it a little bit over a handful of laps with aggressive super speedway racing, to say the least, but they made it till about 8 laps to go. Tyler Reddick had a big run on the bottom, took the lead, swiped up to the top side of the track, putting himself and Kyle Busch in the wall. He was barely clear, if he was clear at all, and either way, he put himself in the wall, which stacked up the outside line behind him. A lot of cars that were lined up on the inside ended up missing the accident, obviously further back, but it did take out about 6 or 7 cars, unfortunately, for that one. But that was just the first of another big one that ended up happening even later in the race. It went green with about 5 or 6 laps to go. I believe it was 5 to go. And they made it till 2 laps to go going into turn 1. Bubba Wallace had a huge run on the outside, getting pushed by William Byron. They ended up going 3 wide for the lead at that point. It looked like that was going to be the move that was going to get Bubba Wallace the win. Hamlin and Logano made contact down low, which shoved Logano into the outside of Bubba. Somehow they all saved it up to that point. William Byron took it 4 wide. He seized the opportunity, and that extra little bit of contact that he made 4 wide there with Logano ended up kind of turning Logano around at the front of the field, and that took out a lot of cars. Probably about 10 to 15 cars involved in that accident. And unfortunately, Jimmie Johnson was involved in that one. All 3 of the drivers made it through that first trek, and they were all nose to tail when they did that, so that looked pretty cool. But in that second big one, Jimmie Johnson was taken out from that point. His chances of making the playoffs and winning an 8th title were pretty much shot at that point. They actually got the car fixed and ready to get out on the racetrack. Afterwards, I don't know how they met minimum speed, but they only had to run those 2 laps. Unfortunately, though, there was not another accident that they could have gained any points off of. That was pretty much the only chance they had at that point. But they made it green those final 2 laps. Regardless of the fact that there was a couple accidents, Harvick ended up getting in the wall, but he was out of the way. And then there was a wreck down the backstretch that involved Ty Dillon. A little bit of a question that it could have been a caution there because it was kind of a fiery accident, though, for Ty Dillon. But the safety crews were actually getting out there pretty quickly, and because it was so far down the backstretch and into turn 3 that it wasn't going to affect them coming back to the start-finish line and all the way through 1 and 2, really getting down back down to speed after the race. So I understand why they ended up keeping it green at that point. Whether it was the right call or not, it's kind of questionable. It's like 50-50 in my head. But regardless of the fact, it didn't change the outcome that William Byron was in the lead at the time of that accident, and he led coming back to the start-finish line. So Byron gets his first win of not only the season, but his first win of his career, just over 2.5 seasons into his career. He was well overdue, to say the least, but William Byron ends up getting it done. Rick Hendrick gets the 1-2 finish. Chase Elliott kind of snuck up there at the end. And honestly, I think Chase Elliott had a chance to contend for the win at the very end of the race. He gave Byron that push down the backstretch into 3 to get him that lead, and Elliott soon followed. But I think at that point, Elliott was content knowing that Byron was in a position that he wasn't going to miss the playoffs if Elliott got around him, but you never know what could have happened from that point. So Elliott played it safe, unlike what Chastain did in the Xfinity race. But regardless of the fact, Chase Elliott played it safe, and William Byron ended up getting his first career win. Good work by Team Hendrick. I thought on that last restart when Denny Hamlin actually restarted in second place that he was going to win, and a large part of that was because there was a little bit of damage with Byron after he got into Logano right at the start of that last accident. Yes, William Byron was able to hold on to. Well, I don't think he was in the lead. Hamlin was in the lead. Byron restarted second, but that inside line just took off on the restart. It really made it tough for the outside. They were side by side for virtually a lap and a half, but Byron ended up getting the edge there on the bottom. Like I said, he had his teammate behind him, but Hamlin, of course, had Truex behind him, but they didn't stay linked up quite as well. They were kind of swapping back and forth, so not as much of a cohesive unit. Definitely a different scenario. Those two guys, Truex and Hamlin, have at least a win this season. They were in the playoffs, so they had a lot less to lose than Byron. But William Byron was able to hold on to it nevertheless. So congratulations for him. Matt DiBenedetto got the last spot on points by 6 points over Jimmie Johnson. And quite honestly, I mean, you could point back to the two races. Johnson scored 1 point at the Coke 600 because he got disqualified, got last place finishing points, and none of the stage points carried over. And Indianapolis, I point more towards Indy because that was likely a false positive test. Obviously, we can't prove that, but he said he had no symptoms. It tested false positive, likely. Either way, it was a positive test, so that's why he could not go to Indy. So 0 points there. He lost, I believe it was 30 points exactly that day that he ended up losing. But come the end of the regular season, you got to figure Jimmie Johnson could have scored 6 points. If he just made it to the end of that Indy race, which you never know, he might not have. But if he would have just made it to the end of the Indy race, he would have scored 6 points. So that's really tough. That definitely eats at Jimmie Johnson. I feel for him. It kind of frustrates me in a sense. If I was a Jimmie Johnson fan, a big Jimmie Johnson fan, I'm sure it would definitely frustrate me. But yeah, it's a definitely hairy and tough situation there. But again, kudos for Matt DiBenedetto for getting that last spot one way or another. And Matt DiBenedetto didn't have the best of nights, but he made it through all the accidents and finished 12th, and that's all he needed to do at the end of the race. So we'll take a look at your finishing results here. Byron first, Elliott second, Denny Hamlin third, Martin Truex Jr. fourth. Bubba Wallace still rounded out the top 5 with a little bit of damage there also. William Byron, I honestly, when they went green with the left rear fender rubbing, there was smoke coming out of that side of the car for the entirety of the last 2 laps. I thought that tire was going to blow. I thought it was going to be like the Clash situation earlier this year when Denny Hamlin had a flat right rear tire going into turn 3 and there was going to be another wreck and it was going to involve at least another playoff contender. So I honestly thought that something like that was going to happen, but it didn't. Whether it was going to be on the last lap or the second to last lap, I didn't know if that was going to happen necessarily. But anyway, Bubba Wallace, kudos for him finishing top 5. Good run. He almost won the race. Ryan Blaney had a quiet but good night. He was in the top 10, scored stage points in both stages, finished second in stage 1, I believe it was, and then he kind of faded back at the end of the second stage, but he still finished in the top 10 there. And snuck in with a top 10 finish. Wasn't really a threat for the win in the final couple laps, but he stayed right in the top 10 all night. So good job for Ryan Blaney. Finishing 6th, Alex Bowman 7th, so that puts 3 Hendrick cars in the top 10. Brendan Gaughan, man, finished 8th. Started last. He was at the back of the pack. That's how he likes to play these. Stay at the back until you have to go with about 10 to 20 laps to go. That's what he does. And man, that Beard family, they bring some good super speedway cars to Daytona and Talladega because another top 10 for Brendan Gaughan. I considered putting him on my fantasy lineup just because of that, but I knew I wasn't going to get any stage points out of him. But he definitely had a good finish. Chris Buescher, also another top 10, finished ninth. He's been doing really good on the super speedways, especially since taking over that 17 car. And Brad Keselowski rounds out the top 10, another Penske car up there. And again, he was playing the same strategy as Blaney and Logano. Logano just happened to be at the front at the end of the first two stages. So at least Joey got a couple more playoff points. So obviously, you'd love to win the race. I think he had the fastest car, to be quite honest. But that is going to round it out there. We already talked about DiBenedetto finishing 12th. There was a lot of different changes late in the race. Christopher Bell, I believe, was like second at one point in the last couple laps. He fell back to 13th somehow. And yeah, that's pretty much going to do it. Reddick got in the accident. I mean, you see all the DNFs there. Daniel Suarez, Joey Logano, Matt Kenseth, Tyler Reddick, Cole Custer. Joey Gase actually was running at the end, but multiple laps down. Ricky Stenhouse, Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, Eric Jones, Ryan Newman, Ryan Preece, James Davidson. J.J. Haley had an engine issue. So we had, do my math here correctly, we had 13 drivers DNF in the race today, but over half the field finished. So, that's pretty good. You don't like to see a ton of junk cars, but to say the least, at least most of them got to the finish. So that's going to do it here for this one. Oh, no, it's not. Never mind. We got the fantasy lineup here. We'll show you how that went. And then, so here's a look at how the fantasy team did. And quite honestly, Newman was kind of at the back of the pack. I knew I was going to keep him in the garage because he didn't score a lot of stage points. It was literally just going to be the luck of if he was going to make it through the wrecks, and he got actually taken out in the first one. So good move on that part. And all my guys were in the top 10 virtually all night. Between the starting lineup, I kind of just went with an oddball with Kurt Busch there, but I figured Johnson and Byron were going to fight for stage points and they were going to work well together. That ended up actually happening. Joey Logano won both stages, so yeah, he was definitely up at the front. Ricky Stenhouse was a contender late in the race before getting taken out in that very first big one, or that 6-7 car accident there, and he scored some stage points also, so he was in the top 10 for a large part of the race. So yeah, I mean, they ran well. It was just, like I said, I figured that those guys, at least 4 of them on my lineup, were going to run really well. And between Kurt Busch and Newman, I was going to say whatever one was going to run better or scored more stage points was going to be the guy that was going to be in my lineup, and hopefully they could finish things off, and that didn't happen. We did have William Byron, who did win the race, and like I said, Logano got wins in both stages. Jimmy actually outscored Joey by a couple points there. He lasted a little bit longer than him because he was able to run those last 2 laps and passed everybody for points that got involved in that accident. But it's just a tough break, I mean, all the way around. It was really my last shot. We came in third in the NASCAR Fantasy or NASCAR Weekly Podcast League coming into this one, and we ended up finishing third. We got outscored by both the guys that we were supposed to beat, so that was pretty much it. And honestly, if this race would have finished out with these guys up in the front, seeing who they had on their team, it was very different from mine, and I was hoping for that because that was my only chance because I had to outscore them. It was looking good there for a while, and then it just didn't. Within that, most of the guys got taken out in that first accident. Kurt Busch, Ricky, and then Johnson, of course, and Logano were taken out in the second one. So, but that's gonna do it here. We'll show you guys the drivers. So again, points scored: Byron number 1, Johnson's 6, Logano had the 9th most points. So good there. So even after those guys' record really wasn't that bad until Kurt Busch and Ricky had their issues in that accident. We were 18th this week. Congratulations for Jake 24 Titan. I believe that is Jake Baskinger. Kudos for him. He not only won this week, but that propelled him from second to first. So he jumped over Kyle Eads, Dirty Bush. Because he had a much better week. He was the leading scorer, so good for him. And like I said, we still finished third. Not bad. I mean, we were in the top 5 literally all season. From Daytona on, we were in the top 5. I think we were like second or third from Daytona. We might have fallen outside of the top 5 here and there, but we got back in it the next week. So a really good season. We'll still have more fantasy advice going forward because it'll be a different game. So we are going to have a much different league, I guess, in a sense. going forward, because the playoff standings, I believe, bring another $10,000 sweepstakes if you win that, like overall. So we'll definitely be going for that. I'll show you guys how that works next week at Darlington. I'll be at Darlington for the race, so if anybody else, there's only 8,000 fans there, but if any of you guys are going, so please say hi. For sure, we'll keep doing this on a weekly basis with the predictions, with the post-race analysis going forward for the playoffs. I'll make my predictions video for the playoffs strictly as well later in the week leading up to Darlington, who I think will get knocked out in what round, and my prediction for the championship. So that is going to do it here for this one. Subscribe for more daily NASCAR content. Hit the like button down below, and share this content if you enjoyed it. You know anybody else that enjoys NASCAR. We got daily videos on the channel. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon.